Hi, this is Chris with Virtual Pokemon League. I'm giving you another deck intro, this time for what we call Frozen Fear. This is a Froslass Spiritomb Zebstrika deck. Here is Spiritomb, the mischievous spirit, and Froslass, the really embittered, spiteful thing, Ice Queen, and then Zebstrika, which speeds your deck along. The idea here, we call it Frozen Fear. This is one of Max's favorite decks. He won an amazing game in a league challenge with this against a really good deck. And this deck can take really big wins because it does really huge damage. Here's how this works. The idea is our main attackers are Spiritomb and Froslass. Froslass is a stage 1. We use Spiteful Sigh. So here's how this works for one energy, one water energy. We can put up to 7 damage counters on this Pokemon. Now it has 80 HP, so 7 damage counters will put it 1 away from death. Up to 7 damage counters on this Pokemon, and if you do, it does 20 damage for every damage counter you put on this Pokemon. So that's 140 damage, which is quite a bit of damage for 1 energy. That's amazing. Now it's close to death, but you might think, okay, no problem, because whatever attack they do, if they hit this Froslass for 280 or 10, it doesn't matter, it's going to knock out this Froslass. This Froslass did 140 damage for that 1 energy, which is pretty amazing. So we get the Snorunt and the Froslass, get the water energy onto it. Spiritomb, what does this do? Spiritomb has this building spite ability. Once during your turn before your attack, you may put 1 damage counter on this Pokemon. Now, why would you want to put damage counters on this Pokemon? Because of Anguish Cry. This attack does 30 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So it does 10 damage, base damage. And for each damage counter on this Pokemon, it does 30 more. So you want damage on this Pokemon. This has a 60 HP. So you could have this sitting on your bench, and every turn, use Anguish Cry to put another damage counter on this Pokemon. If you get up to 5, you're doing 5 damage counters times 30 is 150 plus 10 is 160 damage. Did I get that math right? Yes, I did. 160 damage, which is really great. That's a lot of damage for 1 Pokemon. Again, 10 close to death. 1 more damage counter and this guy's dead. But nevertheless, that's a lot of damage that this guy can do. 160 damage. So 160 for the Spiritomb, 140 for the Froslass. The Froslass is a little bit more consistent. You can do it quickly. You don't have to wait like you do for the Spiritomb. So the idea is you get the Spiritombs on the bench as quickly as possible, and you let them fester. You let them keep damaging themselves, and over time, that damage to themselves comes out in a huge attack. Whereas the Snorunt here sits here and then evolves into the Froslass and does a lot of damage to themselves and bursts out for 140 damage. Especially great if you got a fire Pokemon that has a water weakness. Okay, so how do we get to this state? Well, we play 4 Spiritombs, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 Snorunts and 4 Froslass. We have plenty of attackers, but we're talking about our Pokemon now. We also have 4 Blitzels and 4 Zebstrikas. So here on this ideal board state that I've set up for you, we have Spiritombs festering on the bench, damage counters on them. We've got a Snorunt ready to be evolved into the Froslass, and we've got a Froslass in the active. This would be an awesome turn 2. The Zebstrika has a sprint ability. Once during your turn before your attack, you may discard your entire hand and draw 4 cards. The entire idea behind this deck is that you're consistently churning through it as quickly as possible. You're trying to get your Spiritombs up so they can, from turn 1, start festering and attacking themselves. You want to get your Snorunts down so you can evolve them into Froslass really quickly. You want to get your energy added. Rainbow energy, we have 4 rainbow energy in this deck. 3 dark for the Spiritombs, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 water energy for the Froslass. But the rainbow energy can be any energy, but you add a damage counter to that Pokemon. So Spiritomb is perfect for that. You put this on there, you add a damage counter, and then you add another one for building Spite. So you've got 2 damage counters to start. So it kind of accelerates that damage a little bit. And so you want to get this stuff as quickly as possible. The idea is to get Blitzels down as well, so that you can evolve them to Zebstrikas, and then discard your hand and get more Spiritombs down, more Snorants down, evolve more Froslass, discard, and then do it again. And so you keep churning through your deck as quickly as you can. So that's why we have so many Blitzels and Zebstrikas. You can use the sprint ability, one for each Pokemon that has the sprint ability. So if you use, say, a Marnie, we have got 4 Marnies in this deck. If you used a Marnie, and then you got a Zebstrika, and you can evolve it, you can use the sprint ability, and then you discard all those cards and you get 4 new ones. And suppose you had another Zebstrika up, you could use that sprint ability, you discard those and 4 new ones, and so you keep digging through your deck a lot. It's really easy to use all of your cards from your deck, so you want to be careful not to do that, but you want to get through your deck really quickly. We have 4 Marnies. This card allows you to shuffle your hand, put it on the bottom of your deck, and draw 5 more from the top of your deck. And your opponent does the same thing, but they only draw 4. So it gives you a slight advantage over your opponent. It disrupts your opponent. Plus, you get to see 5 new cards that you didn't previously have without discarding your other cards. Tate and Liza, you just shuffle your hand into your deck and then draw 5 new cards. That's one option. Another one is just switch your active Pokemon with your bench. So suppose you had a Snorant up and you really wanted to evolve it into a Froslass, but you didn't find a Froslass with the sprint ability or something, but you've got a Tate and Liza in your hand. You can use the Tate and Liza to just switch it with a Spiritomb and do a quick attack. So that's an option there. Pokegear, to find another one, I find that 9 supporters is pretty decent, especially if you got the Zebstrika's ability. 9 supporters would be enough. Instead of adding another supporter, I just had 8 supporters plus a Pokegear to find another one, which usually happens because you're churning through your deck pretty quickly. We've got 4 Quick Balls in order to find our Spiritombs as quickly as possible, and our Snorants, and our Blitzels. So one of the challenges of the deck is trying to figure out what to build up quickly. Usually you want to build up your Spiritombs pretty quickly. That's one of the first things you want to get out. But at the very beginning, maybe a Snorant in order to get a Froslass to do that quick attack. We've got 4 Pokemon communications because we have quite a bit of Pokemon here. We've got 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 Pokemon. So a third of your deck is Pokemon, so you're probably going to have a Pokemon in your hand. Pokemon communication will allow you to switch it out to find those Froslasses or whatever you need. We've got U-turn board and a skateboard. I could have 2 skateboards, or 2 U-turn boards, but the skateboard's kind of nice because in case you end up being asleep or paralyzed, you can still retreat. It doesn't really matter that much to me. I usually put them on the Zebstrikas because the Zebstrikas are stable. They're supposed to stay here. I can bring them up. Retreat cost of 1, I can bring them back and then bring up an attacker. I have a big charm here that gives 30 HP to a Pokemon. Why do I do that? The answer is because of Snorant. So suppose I have a Rainbow Energy on the Snorant, so because I couldn't find a Water Energy. I want to put 7 damage counters on this to do 140 damage, but I want it to stay alive. This will allow me to do that with that. And then, just so you know, it will have 3 damage counters remaining. If I do that, I can add another 7 damage counters to it if I want to do another 140. I will end up knocking myself out, but that damage still goes through to the opponents because the knockouts happen in between turns. It might seem weird, but I might put a whole bunch of damage on me in order to do the attack, but that damage isn't, the effect of that damage, the fact that it knocks me out, isn't evaluated until between my attacking turn and the opponent's attacking turn. So I could have 200 damage on this Pokemon. I can't do that much. I could have 140 damage on this Pokemon, or 150 damage on this Pokemon. That doesn't matter. I'm not knocked out until it moves to my opponent's turn. So it's only in between turns that Pokemon are knocked out. So I can add the 7 damage counters twice to myself if I have this big charm. The Hustle Belt is for the Spiritombs. It's a tool card attached to my Pokemon, and it says if this Pokemon has 30 HP or less remaining, it does 60 more damage. So already I said this Pokemon can do up to 160 damage if it has 5 damage counters on it. If it has the Hustle Belt, it's still 10 away from death, but it does 60 more damage. That's 220. So a Spiritomb with a Hustle Belt with 5 damage counters on it, 220 damage, which is huge. That plus a Froslass is enough to knock out the biggest Pokemon you'll find in the Pokemon TCG game. Adventure Bag is just an item card that allows you to search for two tool cards, so 2 Hustle Belts or a Hustle Belt and a big charm. And then you can attach them to your Pokemon. I have 3 Viridian Force in here. Notice that 2 are just internet code cards that we wrote on, and we drew nice little pictures, see? So it kind of looks like the Viridian Forest. That's what we do when we don't have enough cards. But this is a stadium card that allows me to find other cards. So that find a basic energy. I can discard a card and I can search for a basic energy card. It's really helpful if I need a specific water energy for my Froslass or a specific dark energy for my Spiritomb. What else? We got a Ditto Prism card. Ditto Prism, sorry, this is so that we have the option to evolve into a Zebstrika or into a Froslass. And then an Ordinary Rod. So if our Pokemon get knocked out a lot because they're often 10 away from death or very close, and sometimes it's nice to be able to bring them back. Especially the Frostlasses are nice to bring back. So suppose you only have 2 Frostlasses because the rest are prized, and you've got several Snorlax, you can use this to bring back a Froslass. Or suppose for some reason your energy did get discarded, you can bring them back with an Ordinary Rod. It allows you to bring up to 2 basic energy cards and up to 2 basic Pokemon from your discard pile, shuffle them into your deck. And then the Great Catcher. So this is a Great Catcher that allows you to discard 2 cards and bring up your Pokemon, bring up your opponent's, say, Dedenne GX and knock it out with your Spiritomb. This is a really important card for finishing off the game, especially if your Pokemon has your opponent has a big, bulky tag team Pokemon that just got hit really hard with your Spiritomb. They might retreat. You can bring them back up with this Great Catcher and knock them out with, say, a Froslass or another Spiritomb. So this is a super helpful card, and this is what my son won the League Challenge with. He did a lot of Froslass damage. In fact, he used this Icy Wind. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. So he did 40 damage. The opponent's active Pokemon made them asleep, so they couldn't retreat or attack, and it kept coming up tails. And eventually they ended up being knocked out. And then they brought up a barrier, and he could use the Great Catcher to bring up their final Pokemon and knock them out for the win. So the Great Catcher, this is a secret rare Great Catcher that was given to him for his amazing victory in that game, using this a deck that's based on this very concept. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this works out for you. Obviously, the weakness is any deck that can spread damage. Use Roxy Wheezing spread damage, or that Blacephalon that can do spread 12 damage counters, or spell tags or something like that. Because if you're so close to death with the Spiritomb and you want to deal big damage, you want to be about 2 or 3 away from death. And that spell tag can just knock it right out. So beware of the spread decks. But those decks that aren't spread decks, that just deal big damage, which are most of them these days, it's pretty nice to have this deck and to be able to churn through your deck in this sort of way. This is also a pretty nice budget deck. Ditto Prism Stars, probably one of the most expensive cards you'll find here. So it's great to be able to have a deck that deals really big damage for cheap. And this is a pretty simple concept. Just, get your cards out quickly, be willing to take damage for them, bring them close to death, but they do a lot of damage to you. Hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you get to enjoy us playing games with this in the virtual Pokemon League.